High rollers? Why didn't you say so? I won the Sabak Invitational at the Kento Grand. Yeah, took down Mont Masdo in 3 hands.
Ah, just get inside.
You got it.
We have this idea as a species, as people, that when we meet an evil person, a serial killer perhaps, that somehow, some way, we'll just know. We'll feel the darkness, immediately want to attack it with magic missile. Magic missile. The base impulses of such a repugnant person will just ooze off them in waves, corrupting their body in disturbing, unnatural ways. The ugliness within reflected in the external, if you want to put it that way. No matter how hard they may try to hide it, there will be something intrinsically off-putting about such abhorrent representations of the human condition. It's a comforting thought, something to hold firm as an assurance that we can protect ourselves, those we love, from the harsh realities of a hostile world. It makes intuitive sense that, of course, millions of years of evolution, hundreds of thousands as human, even if we discount less immediately related ancestry. After all, good old Homo sapiens have come to be the dominant force across the entire surface of this insignificant little lump of rock we call home. We couldn't have done that if there wasn't something supremely significant about us. I mean, we must be doing something right, that much is true. Those other huge mans, the Neanderthals, the Denisovans, Homo longi, none of them are wandering around doing the monkey dance. It's just us. I mean, let's ignore the 2 to 5% of Neanderthal DNA that slowly diminishes as you trace genetics further east from ancestral stomping grounds of Northern Europe, until it hits East Asia, where it suddenly jumps back up. Because, well, take it from someone who knows. Even before they were human, or at least before they were modern humans, white guys still had a real, shall we say, fondness for them Asian women. And for good reason, actually, all joking aside. Genetically speaking, there are significant advantages to having a shufti outside of the local dating pool. I actually have this hypothesis that the rise of infertility issues in certain areas are intrinsically linked to the fact that some cultures heavily disincentivize mingling with those people. Anecdotal, I freely confirm, but it was a much easier time creating a child with my current partner than with my first. So I'm convinced race mixing, for lack of a better term, engenders a situation which allows for a greater variance of genetic potential. It's a lot easier to avoid inadvertent inbreeding when you're bumping uglies with someone from halfway across the planet. You know?
Moving on.
Have you ever met a serial killer? Because I have. No, really, I have. And, well, anecdotal again, but there wasn't anything that stood out, even on reflection. It was a very brief meeting, to be fair. I was more familiar with their partner. But, there's a reason we have so many of those media interviews of people saying, he was such a quiet, friendly man, so unassuming, nobody would ever have expected. They were always ready to help. Pillar of the community, always had a kind word, would help anyone without hesitation. I really need to read these things ahead. It was literally the next sentence. You know, that kind of thing, anyway. Because people are more than the sum of their parts. Even the worst of us, typically, has something commendable about their character. And even the best of us can harbour some less savoury elements. Have you ever heard of the Cray twins? Widely regarded as some of the most violent, brutal criminals that the country, England, if not the world at large, has ever had the misfortune of enduring, there was nothing that could stop them in their brutality. People were so terrified of them. Apart from a few local Manchester lads, that's where I live by the way, when they tried to expand up here. That part tends to be forgotten, but, well, I know people. They weren't here for long. No, not very long at all. And yeah, they were pretty fucking nasty. I'm quite sure that a lot of the details are left out of the docudramas and biopics because they'd seem too unbelievable. Like, nobody could possibly be that bad, you know? But at the same time, despite all of this, they absolutely doted on their mother. The one does not preclude the other. John Wayne Gacy was a Democrat, quite fiercely so. Though, in his case, it seems much clearer that he used that as a way of accruing a positive public image, rather than being genuinely invested in bettering the lives of people around him. Or Abe Lincoln. He was a pretty liberal-minded guy by all reports, but he was still a nationalist. A Republican, although the Republicans were generally regarded the more liberal party at the time. But yeah, he was a nationalist, which is supported and supposed to be a bad thing, or so I'm told. But enough about all that. Politics isn't what this is all about, and whatever. Let's just suffice it to say, returning to the point I already made, people aren't one note. Good parts, bad parts. Parts that different people will see as being either, depending on their personal standards. Some people will see one thing as a good thing and others will see it as bad. It's not really an objective measure. A lot of it really is just personal opinion.
Oh.
There's a moment in The Exorcist when the priest reacts with intense shock to a telephone ringing. This was prompted by, I think, the director firing off a shotgun on set, which is fucking unhinged behaviour if you ask me. But it resulted in a very intense few seconds of film. Another widely known, at least comparable moment is in the first Avengers film, when Loki is giving his monologue about being a god. I am a god, you dull creature. There was a cable tied to his leg, but I believe, at his insistence, there was no specific time when it would be pulled out. He knew it was going to happen, but not when, so that his reaction would be more authentic, He had a longer script, a monologue to read from than ended up being in the film, and he didn't know at which point they were going to yank it away. And it's another great moment in film, whatever else you might think of them. Now, neither of these examples are evil, really, and I think most people will agree that the latter is much lesser in severity. I mean, firing off a bloody shotgun, unannounced, on a film set is just crazy. But being yanked off your feet, even if you know it's coming, it's still incredibly dangerous. George Clooney suffered a brain injury from something less intense. He fell over in a chair in a scene. I don't know which film it was. I'm only distantly familiar with it. And a lot, like a hell of a lot of actors have suffered some life-changing injuries from performing stunts. Like being permanently paralyzed, kind of life-changing, severed spines and all sorts of stuff. That's why, what's his face? The Dark Knight, he got so angry on the set of Terminator Salvation because somebody messed up a stunt that could have killed him or, paralyzed him for life. It can be a very dangerous career, is my point. Does the multi-million payouts for being in a summer blockbuster really offset the danger? I mean, yeah, apparently so, for a lot of people. But that doesn't make it any less, well, let's call it, at least potentially, exploitative. And I think most of us can agree that exploiting people is a bad thing. Maybe even go so far as to call that evil. Might be a bit too strong of a word, but it's not a great thing, right? You pays your way, you takes your chances, I suppose. Perhaps we could call it a necessary evil. I don't know. That's not what we're really here to talk about. I just hope it's done enough, everything I've said so far, to demonstrate the decision and the direction I'm intending to go with this. To reiterate, people aren't so easily sorted into little boxes of good and bad. There's more to it than that.
Can you dig it?
Well, I think it's been long enough. It's time to address the elephant in the room. Why have I been showing footage of Star Wars Outlaws? It's not really a game that offers a good versus evil playstyle. And, well, that's entirely the problem. See, it was recently added to Game Pass, so I figured I'd give it a go. And something that really started to rub against my bunghole. Kay's a criminal. A thief. By choice, no less. There are tidbits about her having a rough upbringing and sort of being pushed into it, sure. But the way she acts, the dialogue and performance give, like, zero hints of any hesitation. She's almost giddy about it, frankly. She has that clumsy, awkward and stuttering, adorkable personality. You know the one? It's quite common with current Disney protagonists. And why shouldn't she be? A lot of people seem to find that endearing, or at least relatable, despite what online discourse may have you believe. Because, very short tangent, there's a local confectioner. They sell cakes and the like. Really, really good cakes. And they have around a 3 out of 5 rating, despite the quality of their goods, with most complaints focusing around the amount of time it takes for delivery. Nothing about the quality of their noms, just people being pissed that they had to wait a while. Because when someone has a complaint, they're far more likely to air it, because they're miffed, you know? Unless something is exceptionally impressive, we don't typically feel compelled to speak out. Like, if it's a good thing, then it's good. But unless it's the best thing ever, there's nothing of significance to add other than yeah, it's good. This is why we get so many videos calling things a misunderstood masterpiece or the worst thing ever. You have to, really stress it, otherwise, what are you saying? It's like, yeah, it's okay, there's nothing great one way or the other. And it's the same in reverse, if it's not terrible, just kind of bad or underwhelming. So don't let the apparent prevalence of negativity fool you into thinking that everyone agrees. Those are just the most vocal component. You could also just be missing the more positive voices because of algorithms. But yeah, point is, people speak out more when they don't like a thing, when they actively dislike a thing. So look a bit more broadly for the actual consensus. I mean, Twilight made over $3 billion across its film releases, despite all the criticism. Rightly so, I think. So, clearly there was an audience who enjoyed it. And the same with Disney's adorkable characters. They make a shit ton of money. So, again, clearly, there are people who identify with those characters, or at least are willing to put up with them for everything else. And it's not just the money, though. There are, indeed, people who actually genuinely do like the characters, too. Like a birthday party my kid went to. Mirabelle from Encanto was there, by the birthday kid's request. Which is another aspect. Kids, young kids, don't tend to be as widely heard, even when they have a presence online. Algorithms and viewing tastes. I'm 45. I don't tend to watch content made by 13-year-olds. Funny that.
Wait till I get going! Where was I?
So yes, there's no problem with Kay having that kind of personality. No. The game has a preteen/early teenage rating, so that's not the issue. If it's made to be approachable, playable, by kids, by children, there's no problem with characters being made to appeal to that age group, at least on the surface. Older people, I hope at least, are more willing to look past a character they find, for lack of a better term, cringe at times. So it's not a problem there either, looking in favour of a big picture view. Never mind that persistent stereotype that gamers are socially awkward, if not outright medically anxious, which I mean, yeah, I have the TISM and a formal anxiety disorder. Diagnosed a long time ago. I can get behind that, to a point, the socially awkward outcast bit. But you know what? Let's put a pin in this and come back to it later, because this short tangent has gone on longer than I intended. It's just the way my brain works sometimes. And I didn't go off script much, so just throwing that out there. So what's wrong with her, with Kay, being goofy and cringe? And how does this relate to evil game routes, evil playthroughs? Well, first of all, I already said she's a criminal, a thief, by choice. Most people consider that morally objectionable. She even seems to take no small amount of pride in her abilities, and sure, why not? That part, generally take pride in your work. If you're good at something, by all means, be proud of that, even if it is crime. The issue is that this clumsy personality is quite clearly intended to make her seem more likeable. Maybe I'm on a watch list. I don't know if you can hear the helicopter, but it's made to make her seem more likeable anyway. Like she's a cool dude. The sort of person you'd want to hang out with. Go down the pub and share a few brewskis or whatever. And seriously, no. She's a fucking criminal. A nigh gleeful one. Is that really the sort of person we should be aspiring to befriend? I'm sure some do, but worse still though, far worse than that, she's a full-blown mass murderer. Yeah, the push of the game is to focus on stealth and not being seen, but there are also sections where you're expected to fight your way out. Areas you cannot leave until you end combat. He has a pop-up saying you can't do that during combat. Press a fucking button? Seriously? Maybe you could find somewhere to hide until things blow over and then sneak out. But that's clearly not what the devs were pushing for. They need these exciting, bombastic set pieces where you act like a one-man, woman, whatever, army, and mow down everyone in your way. Just full-on massacre. Dozens of people. With other quests specifically about Kay learning new ways to do precisely that. Training with heavy weapons or whatever, being quicker on the draw so that you can kill more people with her pew pew pew, mark and execute, whatever it is. Literally training to be a better killer. Because there is an explicit expectation that there will be gunfire. And from a gameplay perspective, of course the player is going to want more tools, more skills in their arsenal. Greater options for success are universally considered a good thing. Greater gameplay variety, even if the differences are minor. Because think about it. No matter how hard you try, no matter how much effort you put into differentiating them, different models, alternate colour schemes for the pew-pews, firing a gun is firing a gun. Shoot, shoot, bang, bang, sleeping. Full disclosure, at time of writing, I haven't finished the game. So, I don't know, maybe this will be called out at some point. Maybe it will even be done in a significant way. Something down the line that will completely recontextualize every life choice she's made. Fundamentally changing her as a character and shifting the entire focus of the game. But I doubt it. And even if it does, it won't erase everything that came before. And I cannot see any way in which this could be done that will erase that sour taste from my mouth. Your mileage may vary. Kate was, and will remain a shockingly ignorant mass murderer who we're supposed to find noble and endearing. And I actually took a break in writing shortly after this point to play some more of the game and came across a moment that I think is very good at demonstrating precisely what I'm talking about. So, Julie, do the thing.
Knowing the outcomes of all the races, doesn't that take the thrill out of the gamble?
You keep this quiet and I'll give you a cut of any winnings. And don't judge me.
Not
You're
judging.
not really in any position to be moralizing here, love. I mean, okay, maybe you could argue it's not really moralizing, but the tone is somewhat condescending. And there's a mission on another planet where she does exactly the same thing. So it's okay when she does it, but when you do it, it's wrong. But okay, she only did it once, but they're doing it consistently. But do you see what I mean? There's a lack of self-awareness there.
Well, sorry. We thought you were dead.
I was. I'm better now.
Have you ever met a criminal? Not just a serial killer, but just in general. Thieves, specifically, but just in general. Because I lived on a council estate as a child. The British equivalent of the projects, I guess. A lower working class environment. Maybe not rife with full-on poverty, that came later, but certainly underprivileged. The kinds of households that didn't have the means to pursue higher education and aspirations. Even in the UK, where college is free and student loans won't financially ruin you, at least not as inevitably as seems to be the case for America. They are bad enough here, though, don't get me wrong. But even there, because it's not all about money. If you spend all your time around people who have been ground down by the realities of being poor, it's hard to find the outspoken voices encouraging you to do better. It's hard to encourage your kids to go and train to be a doctor or an accountant, something that will offer them at least the potential of a top 3% income, if not more. When you've worked 12 hours in a slaughterhouse, lugging meat around until your muscles ache, draining you both physically and mentally to the point there's nothing left when you come home, you just want to rest. Get as much leisure time as you possibly can to stop your brain giving up before sleeping awkwardly, then waking up to do it again. And for the parents, uncles, whatever that can do that, still find the time, dude, respect. I've worked construction, among other things. It's called back-breaking for a reason. So if you can still find the energy at the end of the day and at the end of the week, major respect. Breaking into someone's house, stealing their TV and selling it for enough money to feed the family for a few days, maybe even a week, doesn't seem like such a bad idea under these circumstances. Under those circumstances, it ain't going to set you for life. You're going to have to go out and keep doing it, but it's easy. It's a lot faster. And yeah, the person whose house was violated sucks for them, but a guy's got to eat. A TV can be replaced, and it's a hell of a lot less work than above-mentioned meat lugging. So, I get it. Just because someone does bad things, it doesn't make them a bad person. A lot of people steal because they want to provide for their family and they don't see any other way to do it. Just because someone is a criminal, it doesn't inherently make them scum. But someone stealing to provide the so-called essentials is not the same as a career criminal looking for the big score. I've never met the latter kind, to the best of my knowledge, but I can tell you, quite firmly, the kind of person pulling off galactic-scale heists with kill counts in the hundreds is not the same as someone from an impoverished background doing what they feel is the only thing they can do to just get by. Which, frankly, is the majority of petty criminals. They are not just scumbags who do it for the thrill, or just because they can. Though there are certainly people like that too. I've met more than one of them.
I understood that reference.
Kay Vess is not some noble, gentlewoman lady thief. Her personality is at odds with the realities of what she does. So, ludonarrative dissonance, if you like. And that's what got me thinking. Because this isn't about her or the game, this one game. It got me musing over the broader issue of why evil playthroughs can fall so flat. Remember when I talked about the religious types in my last video? I mean, probably not, because no fucker watched it. It's currently sitting at 26 views. I'm pretty sure it was disincentivized in the YouTube algorithm because of speaking so openly about violence. There are several no-no words in the title and description, never mind the spoken content. So, to reiterate what I said there are certain religious types who lament the lack of God. Their God, of course, in the cold, tiny black hearts of the repugnant atheist, like myself. Because without God, we'll do all the murdering and raping we want. Which is precisely none. Because, shockingly, most people are generally decent. They don't want to be genuinely evil, even in games. There are studies that show people have emotional reactions to being mean to an NPC, so they don't want to do it. So there's that. That's certainly a major factor in the discussion. Even myself, as easily as I can compartmentalize reality from fantasy, I don't have any particularly strong emotional reaction to doing terrible things in games. It can be a lot of fun to get the GTA wanted level and go on a murder spree. I still go for the good guy, the light side route as a preference. It's simply the way I prefer to be, because I like to think I'm a pretty nice guy. I don't, for the most part, want to roleplay being a complete psychopath. I find it more rewarding to help people when I can, both in the real world and in video games. Sir Mix-a-Lot on crack. There's a third option. Or, more importantly, do you remember Knights of the Old Republic? BioWare are often considered to be something of a gold standard for making believable, relatable, even likable, genuinely terrible people. Engaging at the very least from a narrative perspective. Stories and events that are worth seeing. Which is true. More on that in a moment. First, I'd like to point to something else. Early in the first game, on Taris, Knights of the Old Republic, there's a moment when you stumble across some kids harassing an Ithorian, one of the aliens. I think they're throwing stones at him and hurling racial abuse or something like that. Or would it be special abuse? Because, you know, race and species aren't the same thing. Anyway, and you can step in to stop them, or join in and jeer at the alien, or stop them, then say, "Actually, I just wanted to rob you myself." And dude, that's not evil. That's just being a dick. And that's just one example. BioWare, and most studios' games, are full of shit like that. It's just so hollow. Quite pathetic, really. It doesn't make being a bad guy seem cool or rewarding. Sure, a few credits, but money is rarely hard to come by in video games. It's just so petty. Why would you want to be evil when being a decent person gives you more? It's just more satisfying, even if it's more difficult, which very rarely is. Hell, especially when it's more difficult, because you feel like you've accomplished something.
Remember what I told you.
Don't be a cunt.
Now, towards the end of KOTOR, you can go all in on the dark side. This is the bit I was alluding to a moment ago. It's even possible to have Zalbar, the Wookiee, murder a child. Mission to Twi'lek. I think she's 14. Pretty sure she's 14. She might be 12, actually. I've seen conflicting things on this. Anyway, you can have Zalbar kill her, his best friend, because of his life debt to the player, to you. You can force him to murder her because she refuses to go along with your plans. He'll protest, because she's his friend. They've been together for years, and she'll beg for her life. It's fucking heavy stuff. From the perspective of being evil, narratively, it's amazing stuff. A genuinely evil, malicious act. A decision the character, at least, makes purely to flex and indulge their darker impulses. Even if we'd never act that way ourselves, it's something that can be appreciated, applauded from a literary academic perspective. But writing like that is difficult to do on a large scale. Not that we should expect every moment to be even close to that would be unrealistic. It doesn't need to be. The evil monster doesn't have to be like that at every moment to still be compelling and, more importantly, consistent. Sometimes it's okay to have minor acts of petty cruelty, like calling the Ithorian a filthy hammerhead, then walking away, because they're beneath your notice. You don't care, you're just like, sod off you. That would be, at least in my opinion, a better way of handling it than getting in on the action, acting like a petulant child. Because again, stealing their credits is just dickish, and it's credits, money in a video game. There are very few I can think of where they're ever hard to come by. Genuinely terrible people are far more callous than overly malicious. It's all well and good to include the petty options for player choice and all that. It just starts to really fall flat, in my opinion. Further, there's a larger consideration. Most games are built with the idea that you can experience all of it in one go. It's rare for a studio to be willing to close off huge swathes of content behind the choices we make along the way. First of all, it's a hell of a lot more work. Going above and beyond like that, it means making double, triple, or even more the amount of content. Because most people aren't on board with games that are short on each playthrough, with the idea that you'll go back and time and again to make different choices. Some people used to be. There were a lot of games built like that in the past, but it just doesn't happen anymore. Going back to make different choices to see how it plays out, see what differences there'll be, how it changes. Which means, even when that is done, players still have this expectation that it's not really going to be all that different. So there's even less incentive to make the effort if everybody knows it's not going to really change anything. It'll be minor differences. That's, I say, why so many games have multiple endings that are literally just a single choice you make right at the end. It's a very, very delicate balancing act to make something long enough to be a rewarding gameplay experience, while still being short enough that it doesn't feel like a hassle to go back and do it all again. Roguelikes are quite a niche game genre. You know what I'm saying? Your average person really does seem to be a one and done. You know what I mean? So let's take a look at some examples. I am most certainly not going to have footage of all, if any of them, because I can't be arsed. You should be here for what I'm saying, not for what's on screen. If you want that, then go watch a Let's Play. I do some of them sometimes. So, just going to have to deal with me giving a quick overview. Or not. That's up to you. Anywho, in BioShock, you have the option of harvesting the little sisters, the little girl characters, or of saving them. The former gives you more Adam right there and then. It's the currency you use to power yourself up. It's like XP, I guess, making it easier to get good power-wise. And if it had stayed that way, which was supposedly the intention, it could have worked quite well thematically, shortcut to power. Because you'd be constantly underpowered by doing the right thing. It would be harder, but more rewarding to overcome the challenge. But it's not, because after a while, if you start saving them, the little sisters start giving you gifts of Adam too. You'll find them by the upgrade stations. And they could have even done that while still keeping it on brand. They could have had both. You could have made them like little token gifts, tiny amounts, you know, like a few dozen rather than, I think it's like 1,000. It's a negligible difference between harvesting and saving, realistically. You know, that's in the game as it is. You're not going to power up as quickly, maybe, but you're still going to get there. It's a delay rather than an actual challenge. Knights of the Old Republic 2. You get stat bonuses for being fully dark side, at least mostly dark side. But, well, you get equal stat boosts, albeit for different stats, for being fully light side. There's no real difference there beyond building your character the way you prefer to play. You also have to really commit to one side or the other. Despite all this talk of the dark side being quicker and easier, let's say you got the stat bonuses in stages instead, but only if you were dark side. 1 point for a small amount, 2 at medium, and so on. That gives more appeal without punishing you for not being a dick when you feel it's more appropriate or useful at the time. You still get to keep the bonuses rather than it being a massive shift. You see what I mean? Vampire, with a Y, from the people who made Life is Strange, is one of the worst examples whilst being so close. They actually tried. I have to give them that. See, you can kill named characters for a huge boost in EXP right there and then, like thousands of points, with the downside being that the area they were in would suffer in some way. You're removing a pillar of the community, I suppose. It's a cool concept. You level up quickly whilst dooming the rest of the population to spiral into despair and, of course, killing a person. If it had stopped there, that would have been chef's kiss. The character, the player, could focus solely on their own selfish needs to do whatever the fuck they want with impunity. If not for the fact it's an RPG with abundant enemies to also kill, which still kind of works from a certain point of view. Grinding on the roving vampire hunters to get your level up does take time. They call it grinding for a reason. It's slow, repetitive, it's grinding, but it's still an option because the enemies respawn ad infinitum. So that's what I did, which leads to a massive break in immersion at the end. What's his bollocker? I can't remember his name. Jonathan, I think, going on about how he endured, he never took a life and subsisted without drinking human blood. Just ignore the literally hundreds of random plebs that I massacred along the way, because they just couldn't commit. Only the named characters count. If all the nameless enemies had been completely removed, even leaving in the boss fights, making the only way to level up being killing the major NPCs and completing quests, it would have been too difficult as a game. Could have, would have turned people away, giving the impression that being evil is the meta approach, probably. Even if it would have been more apropos. And yeah, that's the fucking point. Evil should be easy. Being selfish should be easier. You know, fucking everyone over. Even if it had fit the story better, that's the concern a lot of developers have, or at least seem to. Balancing out the good path while still making it worth being evil, if the player chooses to. Even if it's not true, which it is. The vast majority of people want to have fun with their games. I mean, we call it escapist media for a reason.
Search your feelings, you know it to be true.
There's another issue though. One that never seems to be brought up. Maybe, but not that I've ever seen at least. And even if it has, this is my video, and this is what I want to talk about. I alluded to this a few times already, even outright said it. Do you know where I'm going? Well, see, most people, yeah, they ain't evil. it's difficult to get yourself in that headspace. Never mind the concern that if you do write things that are thoroughly repugnant, reasonable people might very well be concerned that you are, in fact, an absolute monster yourself. Tarantino, who I also mentioned in my previous video, shameless self-plug, he had to deal with that more than once, still does to the best of my knowledge. And hey, maybe he is a scumbag. I don't know, seems to have a weird fixation with feet, but I think that's just weird more than anything. I'm just saying anyway, he's making brutally ugly films about monstrous people. But that doesn't immediately mean he likes doing it for real. Seeing graphic violence in a film is not the same as wanting to do it to real people, fantasy, and reality. If you want to really get into the meat and potatoes of it, you have to be willing to go to some dark places. I mean, hello, dark side. Let's go back to that Ithorian again. I maintain that just moving on without paying any attention at all is the more evil option. You know, it's callous, you just don't care. But let's take a moment to muse on the gamut of human ugliness. Let's approach this from the position of fully committing to the conceit. Let's say it's actually a confused, drugged, escaped Twi'lek slave girl, a hot alien chick, that's in a very vulnerable state. Oh hell, maybe it's still an Ithorian. I'm not going to judge. That's what you're into. Anyway, just follow me through here. Alien or person, whatever. Saying that aliens aren't people within the confines of things like Star Wars, they absolutely are. This person, this character, this sentient being is vulnerable, helpless, and you are a disgusting cunt of a person. You can help, sure. You can get them away from there. Then rape them and strangle them to death. Oh, and they're actually 6 years old, by the way, because you're fucking evil. You see someone in distress who can't do anything to help themselves and fully take advantage of the situation for your own desires. That's what evil people do. Would you want to do that? I fucking hope not. But would it be more accurate for an evil person? Yes. Yes, it would. Because evil people, yeah, are fucking evil.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Evil characters, on the other hand, in games at least, for the most part, they're just selfish pricks. Which is part of it, certainly. The scenario described above is absolutely selfish, debased, and disgusting. It's just being evil is more than just selfishness. It's about being completely self-absorbed. Like a narcissist, I suppose. Caring about nothing outside of your own wants and desires. Everyone, literally every single person around you, is nothing but a tool to serve your own ends. Barring a few rare examples, perhaps, like the mother thing mentioned above with the craze. Even the worst people in real life can, and frequently do, have something outside of themselves that they hold dear. Maybe they're a genocidal maniac who loves dogs, for example. Or a pathetic thug who loves their mum. Whatever. Again, it's not that every single event needs to be that intense. The point I'm trying to make is that if we are to truly, fully embrace going down the dark path, we should be willing to really do it. Go all out and portray the very worst impulses, not just a few pivotal moments. Another balancing act, I suppose, enough to make it consistent. That's something that my autistic brain really craves. Not the evil part. I hope that's implicit. The consistency. I want characters, events, settings that are cohesive. I don't want things to break. I can accept a degree of contrivance for the sake of flow, but only so much. eventually hits a tipping point. So if I am going to play an evil character, I need more than a few acts of petty ignorance. We keep having these discussions about how games haven't matured yet. Even the supposed Citizen Kanes we keep pointing to. There are valid criticisms to be levied, moments where the writers seem to balk and falter at the final hurdle, coming so close but inevitably falling short of going all in. The argument I keep hearing is because of the interactive, tactile nature of playing a video game. Because I've said this in previous videos, the way we talk about games is more intimate than other mediums. When you make that tricky jump, you made that tricky jump. Even if you were just pressing buttons and it was Lara who actually did it on screen. Because you pressed the buttons, your brain translates it, and it was you that made the jump. Making a choice in a game, like finding a room full of runaway enemy soldiers and choosing to massacre them instead of worrying about them trying to escape later, or passing on information about your troop complement. This is just a hypothetical, by the way. I don't know if this ever happens in a game. But it's an uncomfortable choice for you to make, or would be. But I mean, isn't that the whole point of moral choices? Don't we also keep hearing people lament the lack of impact? There are certainly a notable number of voices who really do want to be confronted with that level of nuance. But well, do they really want that? Or do they just think they do? Never mind wondering if anyone will even choose those options when they are there. I refer you back to the whole why make this if no one will play it issue, which is a valid concern. Also, the other previously mentioned concerns about character assassination, because that is a very real concern as well. People really do worry about that and really should. Oh, you thought we weren't going to mention it? Well, screw you, we're too deep in now. If you don't like Kay's face, you're a pathetic gooner who needs to touch grass and meet a real woman. There, I fucking said it. Are you happy now, Mr. S-Man that probably doesn't even exist? Ugh. The very fact this even needed to be said is pissing me off enough already. So, allegations of being a piece of shit are a valid concern. We've seen far too much evidence of that already.
This is awkward.
Tarantino's films are really popular. So clearly, there actually is an audience there, at least in theory, that wants things to be more extreme. Just look at the French media, what was it, New French Extremity I think they called it. Or how about a better example? One that fits more with that thing I said earlier. Yeah, I am actually avoiding reiterating the specifics, you know, the alien bit, because it was pretty bloody disgusting. But that's this video's in fact, I guess. The butt part. There's a very solid, still mostly popular example in both film and literature. Have you ever heard of Game of Thrones? That has some aggressively ridiculous levels of murdering and doing the nasty without asking for beforehand. And it was watched, read, still read and watched, applauded by tens of millions of people. It was a cultural phenomenon. So yes, clearly, there really is an audience. There really are people willing to go along for that ride. Is it really so much to expect that there are people who can take just as much, well, not pleasure, let's say people who can find just as much engagement in the same kind of stories as a video game, a piece of media they can directly control and influence and feel part of, if not outright be part of? Maybe it would be better to keep that level of depravity to the antagonists, acts that the player doesn't have to initiate, Like, you know, you just witness them or hear about them. Like how a lot of horror games make the player weak to make it more scary. The story could be more potent if the evil acts are beyond the player's control. A different kind of disempowerment. Even an incentive to continue, grow more powerful, and give the good guys a good old... Good guys? The bad guys a good old sock in the mouth. I'm leaving that in, fuck it. Maybe that would be better, at least to begin with. Maybe, just maybe, doing it like that, making those kinds of games for a while, for a few years, that could help ease people into them being a bit more genuinely evil, desensitize them even, so that they'll be better prepared to become an active participant a few games down the line. Or maybe some mad lad will just do it and accept that their games are going to have a tiny audience. Oh, well, have you ever heard the phrase Hana no Hime? If not, and anything I've said here has made you even remotely uncomfortable, don't look it up, don't look into it. Those who know, you know. Those who don't, suffice it to say, it's about sexual violence. So, I mean, content like that does already exist. I'd argue it's almost universally exploitative. But again, there is an audience there. It's proof of concept that darker, really dark, content can still find an audience and even be appreciated as art. Because it is art. It may not be good art. That's a debate I have no interest of going into right now, but even bad art is still art. Like the way I put it, it may not be a work of art, but it's still art. You know what I mean? So the real takeaway, the TLDR of my thesis, if we're going to do evil roots in games, oh, here comes the dog, right at the end. If we're going to do evil roots in games, how about we make them, you know, actually evil? Not just being a dick. Be a true monster. It's the only way to avoid the cognitive dissonance. The only way I think is worth considering, at least. Just commit to it. Wholesale. And that's all she wrote. So add your thoughts if you feel so inclined. Join my Discord, maybe. Still have their Patreon. No patrons though, so you could do that too. Or don't. The real point is, thank you for watching.